You told me about Jesus dying on the cross. When did this happen? He goes, do what? He goes, when did this happen? He goes, well, it happened over 2,000 years ago. And the village leader, he had this puzzled look on his face. And the missionary goes, what's wrong? He goes, what took you so long? This morning, we're starting a new series entitled Sermons Inspired by Hymns. And so this morning's hymn that we're going to be talking about is Send the Light. How many of you guys like the hymns? They've been around for a while, amen? So over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing this series. I'll probably take a break for Father's Day in the middle of it, but we're going to go for 3 or 4 weeks, kind of talking a little bit through sermons inspired by hymns, because I know for me, I was raised in that Assembly of God church that sang hymns every Sunday. And I know that God loves all styles of music that glorify Him, right? I love the new worship. I even like some Christian rap. I think that's the youth pastor that comes out in me. But I love songs that glorify God. And lyrics are important. Amen. And so I think when we look at these songs that are written so many years ago, we realize that they came from the heart of somebody who truly loved God. And not all of them are necessarily biblical, but we want to look at a few of them. And the first one we're looking at today is Send the Light. This song was written by Charles H. Gabriel in 1890, and we just sung it in 2023. That's been a day or two. It was written for a missionary hymn for Easter Sunday to highlight the golden offering. It was first sung March 6th of 1890. If you've never heard of Charles H. Gabriel, he wrote over 7,000 hymns, including His Eye is on the Sparrow, I Stand Amazed in His Presence, and Higher Ground. Gabriel wrote under various pseudonyms, including Charlotte G. Homer. So that's something that's interesting. But I think that we probably have heard a couple of those other songs as well. I wasn't going to go through the 7,000 of them this morning due to time restraints here in the sermon. But Send the Light is a song that I have heard numerous times as a missionary going and visiting churches and raising support. They always sing that song over us. And it's a song that has touched my heart, because the reality of it is that every single one of us are called to be missionaries. And Charles Spurgeon said it this way: every Christian is either a missionary or an imposter. So we are called to go, right? The Bible tells us in Matthew 28, 18, 19 through 20, says all power has been given to Jesus. And he says, go ye into all the earth and preach the gospel. And some of us get hung up because it says preach. Well, that means the preacher. Well, the word preach means to proclaim the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And every one of us, by that term, is a preacher. So every one of us is a missionary. We have been called to cultivate, to plant seeds, and to reap harvest where we are sent by God. And I believe this: every one of us need to do the job of blooming where we have been planted. Some of us have been called to work in the area where we work to be a missionary. Some of us may be called to do other different things through our giftings. And some of us may just have that burden to go to a third world country or go to a different nation and to share the gospel. And so I want to say, Send the Light, one of the reasons I picked this song was many, many, many years ago, when I was a teenager. In fact, it was 2002. We took our first missions trip as a youth group to Denver, Colorado, to Sock's place, which I mentioned earlier. And our youth pastor always made our trips fun because we always took one day off to go have fun. And we had spent that week just in culture shock because we came from Hickory County, Missouri, and we went to downtown Denver, Colorado, near the 16th Street Mall. And we witnessed homeless people climbing out of dumpsters in the morning. I had witnessed drive-by shootings. I had witnessed things I had never seen before. I watched a prostitute get out of a car, literally doing business. there were some things I'd seen I had never seen before. And my heart broke for this city called Denver that was in America, because I had went to Mexico the year before, and I knew that Mexico was a culture shock, but that was a different country. There was just a bridge that separated us, but it was different. But going to Denver, it was in America. In the United States, people live and eat out of trash cans. And so on this fun day at the end of our trip, we went to Six Flags in Denver, which is the Mile High City, right? And so when we were there, we rode some rides, which I don't get in. We rode the rides, not my thing. If I want to go fast, I'll just get in a car with somebody else, because that's about the thrill for me. I like to drive. I don't like riding. But I rode some rides. And at the end of that day, we went up to this tower at Six Flags. And it was dark. And we said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to walk around this tower. It was square. And we're going to pray over the Mile High City. And glass windows all the way around this tower. And we're praying. And there's 2 youth groups there, 2 Assembly of God youth groups. And we're just kind of walking around. And we're just praying over the city and praying over the theme park, that God would do something in that city, that God would reach that nation. And tears began to form in my eyes as I looked out this window, and I could see across the city of Denver, there was lights everywhere, street lights all over this city. And I was like, wow, I have never seen that many street lights in my life. And I began crying because God spoke to me, and he said, look at all the lights. Now look at the darkness. Now go and run to the darkness. Take the light that I've given you and go to the darkness. And I can tell you at that point, at 19 years old, is when God began to form my heart to be a missionary. He began to just do something amazing in my life and give me this heart for other people. And so when we picked the song, Send the Light, for this message, it reminded me of a tower in Six Flags in Denver, Colorado in July of 2002. Just a day or two ago. Thank you. But how many of you guys know that God wants each and every one of us to be the light in the darkness? In John 8, verse 12, Jesus says, I am the light. He's the light of the world. How many of you guys know that when we receive Jesus Christ as our Savior, we've been given that light, and what he wants us to do is take that light to others? The gift of salvation is free, but it comes with a price, because with that price, we need to share it with others. You guys know we live in a broken world where people really need Jesus. So as we celebrate Mission Sunday this morning, and we see all these beautiful flags and the pictures of the missionaries we support, I first off want to tell you that you are called yourself to be a missionary, and every one of us have a place in missions. Maybe our place isn't third world missions, but we do have a part in that as well, because there are different types of world missions, right? And one of those types is you're the goer. But every goer needs what? A sender. And not all of us can go. So what part do we play as senders? Partnership, right? Partnership. How do we partner with a missionary? We partner by praying for them. We partner by supporting them and giving to them so that they can go and do the work. And I want to tell you, as a missionary, you give up some things. There's a sacrifice to going, but they can't go without our help. I think about this couple coming Wednesday night. I do not know them very well. I visited with them a little bit over the phone. I do know that they served in their first position in ministry at Branch Assembly of God. They've been doing ministry for several years now. They've been in the state of Oregon on staff as a creative arts pastor, I believe. They have 3 children. And now God's called them to go to Honduras. And I want you guys for a moment to think with me, what would that be like to take 3 young children to a third world country because you have a burden and a burning in your heart for Jesus Christ? Think about what they miss. Most missionaries, not all, but most missionaries go for several years. Some of them go for 3 to 4 years at a time. And so they come home, and when they're home, they're traveling and they're raising support. So they pretty much raise their kids away from family. And that's one of the biggest burdens they have, is because grandparents miss birthdays. Their grandkids go to the mission field as little tykes. Some of them are even born on the mission field. And by the first time they actually get to see them in person, they're running and walking and talking. And the next time they see them, they're halfway grown. So there is a price for them to pay. And you know what a special thing to be able to be obedient to God and do what God's called them to do. But we as a church also have that part in sending them. And that part is to support them and to encourage them and to pray for them. And what I've figured out over the years is it's easy to remember missionaries when they're here. It's easy to think about them, but how many times do we walk through the foyer on Sunday morning and we don't even look at the newsletters? And I hear people say this to me all the time. Well, our church is constantly asking for money. I'm just tired of giving. Well, it sounds to me like you might have a heart issue this morning if that's you. Well, what do we get out of it? It's not about us. It's about being obedient to the call of God to support missions. Well, we never hear anything from them. They never come and speak, probably because they're not here. But they do send a newsletter every month. They do ask for prayer. And I've never met a missionary yet that their first request for other believers is not for money, but for prayer. Because prayer is so important. And what I can share with you about my experience in the mission field, it's very lonely. The mission field's a lonely place. I remember several Sundays being in Haiti, and we would go to church, and because we were still learning the language, we didn't really understand a whole lot of what was being sung or preached, but we still attended church every Sunday. And we would come home, and if the internet was working, I would try to live stream part of the service at home. And when I did, I realized what I was missing out at home, because I watched brothers in Christ who got ordained as deacons or got baptized, youth that were in my youth ministry the year before get baptized, and I wasn't there to see it. So missionaries do sacrifice a lot to be there. And what I see in my own life, I'm not preaching at you guys this morning, I'm going to preach at myself, is this. So often I forget about those people, those special people that God called to go somewhere else. And I allow my life to be self-centered and self-focused. Well, I give when I think about giving, or when there's a little extra money in the bank. But what about and I'm not talking about sacrificial giving even. I'm just talking about being supportive. Are you guys uncomfortable this morning? Because I am. I'm uncomfortable talking about this morning. Money's not my thing. And it's not really where we're going in the message, but it's worth saying. One thing I love about the Southern Missouri network of the Assembly of God is that they love missions, and so do I. It's one of the reasons that I feel like God drug me back to the Assembly of God Church. Not necessarily drug, but brought me back. Because in the Southern Missouri network, we're the 11th largest network in the United States. I think in the world. And we send more missionaries than anybody else. We raise more money than anybody else for missions. So we know that people in Southern Missouri love missions. Right? So we can celebrate that. We can celebrate the fact that our church loves missions, because missions is God's heart for his world. Amen? So we celebrate that, but then we look at what is our piece of the pie this morning. Our church has pledged to support, I believe, 13 missionaries total, right? 14 missionaries, counting Bumpy Road Missions, which is our Haiti ministry. 14 missionaries that we've pledged. A total of $420 a month. Can I talk numbers for you guys for a minute? Are you guys hearing me still? So $420 a month is what we pledge to give to missions. Then we do above and beyond that, because we support the Good Samaritan Center. We collect money for BGMC. We do women's missions ministry. Some of us support Light for the Lost, which is our men's missionary initiative. So we do a lot for missions. So $420 a month is not all we do, but we do $420 a month. Each month we pledge to support 14 missionaries, $420 a month. I'm talking numbers here, so don't get lost with me. But think about this. If every member in our church would give their share toward that $420, you divide it up by members. Now, half of you here are not members, So this is not going to exclude you, but just think about this. This is just a little thing that I wanted to do this morning. If each member said, and these are adults, these are not children, I am willing to do my part. What would be your part in missions a month out of $420? About $3 a week, about $12 a month. We would make sure the money was there to pay our missions. Here's the nice thing about it. When we do our missions offering, when it falls short, the money comes out of our general fund and we take care of that. I say this because last month, the first Sunday in May, we took about offering for our 14 missionaries, and we said we loved them enough by giving $200. That's half. I'm willing as a member to give half, $6. That hurts. Don't it? It hurts. It's not all about money. And I'm going to get off of money here, but I wanted to share that with you this morning because it really hit me hard as a pastor, because sometimes we forget. We forget. How hard is it to come up with $12? Depends on what you're wanting to buy with it, right? I go out to eat with my family. It costs $70 easily. And if I want to be really generous, I'll take my kids to Taco Bell and we'll spend half that and give the other half to missions, and we just come up with $35 for world missions. So I say this not to beat you over the head, but just to challenge you to think outside the box when it comes to missions, because missions is important. And we don't want our Assembly of God missionaries to be sitting in the field going, well, we can't do a draw on our account because we don't have the money to do the work that we need to do. It really saddened me when my friend called me last Sunday and told me that, the thought of, I couldn't even do a draw. We got here. We're going to be here for a year. And well, I guess the first 2 months we won't be able to do anything because the money's not there. Pretty sad stuff. So anyways, let's get back to the message. That was a little off base there. We'll go here. So send the light. Isaiah 61 says this, arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is upon you. He is the light, right? What are we doing when we're sending the light? We are sending people forth to go and be missionaries and take the good news of Jesus Christ to the world. Do you realize that there is over 1 billion people that have never heard the message of Jesus Christ in the world today? It's unbelievable, isn't it? And we think about, well, we've been sending missionaries for years and the work's still not done. How many of you guys know this? That missionaries usually want to go to the easy places. We've done a real good job of sending people to grab the apples on the lower branches. But Pastor Stan mentioned this last week when he was here. We've got this whole new initiative to go reach the Buddhist and the Hindu world. Why? Because those are nations that are really hard to reach. The Muslim world has been really, really hard to reach. But the exciting thing about what we hear about the Muslim world from missionaries today is this, that there are literally Muslim people who have had dreams at night where Jesus Christ appeared to them and said, hey, come and follow me. So God is working in the hearts of Muslim people to find the way, which is Jesus Christ. Acts 1:8 tells us this, and you shall receive power, and after that the Holy Spirit come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses unto me in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the utmost parts of the earth. So where are we to go and take the message of Jesus Christ? Say it with me. Everywhere. Everywhere. Right? So why do we do missions at home? Because we're called to do missions at home. And I will tell you from a missionary perspective today, the thing that frustrated me the most as a missionary is going into dead churches where people are sitting and doing nothing to reach their own community. And they feel like they're doing something good for God because they give me a check and send me on my way. Because as the missionary goes forth to the third world nation, we have the responsibility to reach the people in our own communities. Do you realize America currently has more missionaries working in the country than they do sending them out? We used to be the biggest sender of missionaries. Now other countries are sending more missionaries to us than we are sending out. And that is a problem. The church in America needs to wake up and realize God has given us a task. We need to take ownership of the mission field that God has given us, the Jerusalem that we live in. And you may say, well, I don't feel called to that. Well, guess what? You are, baby. You're called to it. You are called to take that good news, that gift that God has given you, and share it with somebody else. And I'm not saying be robotic. I'm not saying be fake and phony, because that doesn't work. But what I am saying is that we need to be intentional in taking the message of Jesus Christ to the people around us. How many of you know somebody in your family or somebody that you work with that does not know Jesus, and if they die, they're going to go to hell? Most of us. And we worry about being uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want to offend them. Well, I'm afraid to offend them, so I'm just going to let them go to hell and burn for eternity? That doesn't sound right, does it? I heard a video of a preacher preaching on missions, and he shared a story about this guy who was called to go to China to remote villages and share the gospel. And it said he went as a missionary, and as he spent time in this rural village, he began leading people to Christ. And some of the village leaders had gotten saved. And one of the village leaders approached him one day, and he goes, "You told me about Jesus dying on the cross and paying the penalty for my sins so that I could be forgiven. When did this happen?" He goes, "Do what?" He goes, "When did this happen?" He goes, "Well, it happened over 2,000 years ago." And the village leader, he had this puzzled look on his face. And the missionary goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "What took you so long? What took you so long? It happened 2,000 years ago, and you're just now telling us about it." I heard that message, and it reminded me of the urgency of the good news. See, Jesus spoke to his disciples, and he said, "The fields are white for harvest. Pray that the Father would send laborers to harvest the field." Do we realize that we live in a whitened field that's ready for harvest? The world is looking for their Savior. And God has tasked us to be the one to bring in the sheaves. I remember being a youth pastor. There was a video I would show every once in a while in youth ministry. And it was a depiction of these three young men who were in school. And two of them, one of them was a Christian, and two of them died, and they went to hell. And they come back from hell to torment this kid. And it's not biblical in any way, but it gives us this picture of these two kids. And they said, "Hey, Johnny, you told us that you were a Christian, but you never told us about Jesus. You jokingly said, 'Well, yeah, I go to church.' You kind of mocked God, but why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us that Jesus was the way? Why didn't you tell us that Jesus Christ died for us? Why didn't you tell us that if we didn't accept him and have a relationship with him, we'd die and go to hell?" It's very tormenting, this video is. But the reality of it is how many times do we stand back and watch friends and loved ones and strangers heading down the highway to hell, and we don't have enough courtesy or love or compassion in our heart to say, "I found a better way. I found a better way. Jesus is the way. You don't have to continue down that path of brokenness." So we send the light. The first verse of that song says, "There's a call come ringing o'er the restless wave. Send the light." That should be the burden of all of our hearts. We need to take the light of Jesus, because what does light do? It radiates, it expels and goes forth. And if we have Jesus inside of us, we're not called to hide that light under a bushel. The Bible talks about that, right? It says, "You are the light of the world. The city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." If the light of Jesus is in your life, you have got to send it forth. You've got to radiate it. As a missionary, we should see those things that break God's heart and should put a burden on our souls. And some of us are called to different kinds of mission fields. Maybe it's a lost family member or loved one. Maybe it's a certain age group. Maybe God has just placed this burden with you for elderly people, because you just can imagine how lonely they are. Maybe God has just put this burden on you to reach this generation, because if something doesn't change in the generation that we have now, where are we going to be in 20 years? Maybe you just see people and go, man, they need Jesus. You've heard me say that before, that person with the blue hair and the tattoos. Maybe that's the person where you're like, you know what? I just see brokenness when I see certain kinds of people. I got to be careful saying the whole tattoo deal. I've gotten in trouble a couple times for that. God loves people with tattoos, doesn't he? Tattoos ain't going to send you to hell. So I want you guys to know I jokingly say that, and I know that you guys have them. But the reality of it is sometimes we can get so judgmental towards certain people because they're different than us. And I think our prayer should be sometimes, God, give me your eyes for people. I mean, a lot of Christians go, I love God, but I can't stand people. Well, you probably need to get saved. If you don't love people, you got a problem, because God created them in his image. Matthew 24:14 tells us, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. We are called to proclaim the gospel to every nation. Some people get hung up, well, I think we need to be doing more at home. I don't think we need to be doing all that stuff overseas. Well, guess what? It's biblical to send missionaries overseas. According to the Great Commission, according to Matthew 14, where I just read. But what we have to have in church is balance. We need to be just as focused on missions at home as we are overseas. You guys getting that? There got to be a balance. That's why we have flags here that are American flags with a blue stripe, because we support a chaplain here in America. The couple that was here Wednesday night with us from Rural Compassion, Randy and Kathy Cartwright, they are missionaries through the Assembly of God with Rural Compassion, and the burden that they have on their heart is to go to rural churches and help them reach their communities. They're a missionary. They're no different than the guy that's going to Africa. They're no different than the guy that's going to Haiti. They're missionaries. And you know what? They blessed our socks off, I think, Wednesday night when they were here. I know they did, your pastor. They loved on your pastor pretty good. But we need to be that kingdom-minded believers that say, I want to take the good news to everybody. I want everybody to know who Jesus is. What I love about these missionaries and these flags that are across the front here is they may never be famous. They may never have their face blown across the TV screen. But their ultimate goal is not to be famous, but to make Jesus famous where God has sent them. And shouldn't that be all of us' heart as believers? I want to make Jesus famous. I said this a while ago, but Matthew 9:37-38, then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest. It sounds like America today. It's hard to find laborers for anything. And even the church is suffering. Where are those that will take ownership of the mission field and say, you know what, I have a part to play in world missions. I have a part to play in the mission field. Every one of us has got a ministry. My job as a pastor is to equip you and help you find your ministry and help you develop it. Because we all have a part to play in the kingdom of God. So send the light. Verse 2, we didn't sing that this morning, but it says, we have heard the Macedonians call today, send the light, send the light. In a golden offering at the cross we lay, send the light, send the light. That verse of that song is based out of Acts 16, where Paul had a vision of a man from Macedonia saying, come and help us. And the Bible says that Paul realized that God was speaking, saying, go and take the gospel to Macedonia. So the song says, the Macedonians are calling today. That's the burden of God on our hearts. And you know what's amazing for us as Americans, sometimes we see that need, that burden somewhere, and we go, man, I wish somebody would do something about it. Who do you think God's wanting to use in that moment? You, right? See a need, fill a need. God's wanting to use you in that place. Well, I wish somebody would go and do something. How about you? And we have the devil whispering in our ear telling us why we're not qualified and why we can't be used. And who are you to do that? And God says, I want to use you because you're the perfect person. I'll be glorified by the work that you are doing. Can I tell you, when I got called to go to Haiti and do missions work, that was me. I'm like, God, anybody but me. You want me, the hillbilly, to go to a third world country? And you want me to remember a language? Ouch. God can use anybody. Romans 10, 13 through 15. Everyone, say that with me, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Not just the elect, not just the chosen, everyone, it says. Because we're all chosen by God. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they've never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. Paul asks a lot of questions in Romans 10 there. He says, how can they hear if they never heard? And how are they going to be told if nobody goes? And how can they go if they haven't been sent? A church body is called to be the ones that send. And I love this. I heard Stan Welch say this at the missions conference a while back. The Assembly of God doesn't send missionaries. The churches do. It's not the network. It's not the district. It's churches that take ownership of the mission field and say, hey, we are going to send these people out. We're going to anoint them. We're going to pray over them. We're going to commission them. We're going to give them financial blessing, and we're going to send them off to do what God's called them to do. What some of us need to do is recognize the calling within ourselves. And just maybe, when you surrender to the call that God's placed in your life, it might lead somebody else to be obedient too. I shared with you earlier that Roland's coming tonight. I can tell you the biggest scare I had was being obedient to God and go to Haiti for 3 years because I didn't know how long it was going to be. But I remember preaching a message on missions for our church because I was the missions pastor. And I'm like, who will go? Who will go? And I just remember God said, you'll go. And I said, you know what? If nobody else wants to go, I will go. And I will be obedient. And my obedience to God was contagious. Because when I stepped out and did what seemed to be impossible in my own life and my family's life, you know what happened? Other people started asking questions. How can you be so bold? How can you be willing to give up everything? What about your kids' future? And aren't you concerned about your kids? No, what I'm concerned about is being obedient to the call of Jesus Christ and answering that call. And all of a sudden, I watched friends like Jared and Tyler come up and say, hey, God laid it on our hearts to start a ministry. We were doing a fundraiser event for our church, for our Haiti missions at our previous church. That night, Jared, Tyler, and Chris come up to me. They were helping serve at our event. They were just volunteering. And they said, hey, God laid it on our heart to start a ministry. We don't know what we're supposed to do. Be obedient. I give simple answers. Be obedient. I had this other couple in our church. They came up to us. We have heard God call 2 or 3 times, and every time we get ready to take that step, we get scared and we run backwards. We want to be obedient. We want to do something for God. We want to support missions. And they said, we can't go. We're raising our, how many grandkids they were raising. But what we can do is buy a food truck, and we can sell food, and the proceeds from this food truck is going to go to support missions. It was contagious. Why? Because I took ownership of what God was calling me to do, and all of a sudden people said, you know what? I have a part to play too, so I'm going to take ownership. And I'm not tooting my own horn here because I failed God miserably over and over again. But guess what? The same thing can happen here at Branch Assembly of God. When we take ownership of what God's given us, we felt led by God to support 14 missionaries. as a church? What about as an individual? What is about an individual? Is there just this missionary that God's just laid on your heart? And it's $30 a month. And say, you know what, as a member of Branch Assembly of God, I want to support a $30 missionary. As a believer, I want to do my part, and I'm willing to make sure that they get $30 a month because I'm going to do my part. Is that too much to ask for some of us? Maybe you don't have that right now. Maybe you say, I can pray. Then we should pray. I shared with you a story about what took so long. That story really rang in my ear. What took so long? Well, what if God's waiting on you to tell somebody about him? Pray it's not too late. A few years ago in 2018, there was a man named John Allen Chau, I believe it's Chau. John Allen Chau. Some of you guys may have heard of him. He was 26 years old. God called him to go to an indigenous tribe, the only tribe left in America that has basically secluded themselves, or not America, in the world, that has secluded themselves from everybody else. The Sentinelese people in India. The Lone Ranger, John Allen Chau. I love his story because he felt so burdened by God to go to this tribe and tell them about Jesus. It was illegal to go. Nobody is supposed to approach these people, but he had such a burden to go and share the message of Jesus Christ that he went and he rode out there to where these people were at, and before he got to the bank, they killed him. He's a martyr for Christ Jesus. He gave his life so that people could hear the good news, and he never even got to proclaim it. But what happened in 2018 when he died was so many different Christian organizations and people stood up and said, he's not a martyr, he's a fool. He's a fool. He should have never went there anyways. He's a radical. He went where he was not even supposed to go. It was illegal. He was taking the message of Jesus somewhere where we never should have been, and he's just a radical fool. Even his parents said that it's on other people. They're the ones that taught him and told him that's the way we're supposed to live. John Allen Chau's parents are from Assembly of God Church. They're members of Assembly of God Church. John Allen Chau was raised in Assembly of God Church. He went to Royal Rangers. I thank God that we have taught kids that it's okay to lay your life down for Jesus Christ. I read an article where a pastor was responding to all this negativity. And he goes, where are the Christians like the ones we had just a few hundred years ago when they heard about this guy so willing to die for Christ, said, you know what? He may have laid his life down, but I'm going to walk upon his life to reach these people. You guys ever heard of missionaries that did that? Anybody ever heard of the name Jim Elliot? Pete Fleming, Ed McCully, Nate Saint, and Roger Youderian? There's movies out about them. They got killed trying to reach one of those indigenous groups. And their wives went back and reached them for the Lord. It's an amazing story. True story. It really happened. And this preacher says, where are those people at? Where is the Christians in America that have a backbone, that are willing to sacrifice so that the name and the message of Jesus Christ goes out to the whole world? Are there any in this room that would say, you know what, I'm willing to sacrifice my preferences? I really want to go out to Outback Steakhouse, but I think we'll just go to Wendy's tonight so that my giving can support a missionary. That's radical. If you want Outback, baby, get Outback. Is that radical? Willing to switch your DirecTV plan from the $99 a month to the $49 a month so you can support missions? Is that radical? It is in our world. Small changes, guys. That's what changes the world, small changes. Willing to turn that thermostat up just a few more degrees to save on your electric bill because you want to support a missionary. See, what most of us do is say, well, if I had just a little bit more money, I would be more generous. If you can't be generous with what you got now, you'll never be generous when you're rich. Never. That one kind of hit me right there. It's true. Some of the most generous people I know have very little in their wallet, but they're willing to share. They're willing to sacrifice. Something that hit me when we were preparing to go to Haiti is everything that God has given me is given to me for a purpose. And I'm called to be a good steward of everything. So what am I doing with it? This job that I have, this check that I get every week, am I being obedient and a good steward with that check? This gift that somebody's given me, this blessing that somebody blessed me with, even to the clothes I wear and the cars that I drive, are gifts from God. What am I doing with them? Am I using them for my own pleasure, or am I using them to glorify God? That sounds radical, doesn't it? Radical. Some of you go, man, this guy's a fanatic. We hired him to be our preacher. Can I tell you what? Our God was so generous that he was willing to give his greatest gift for us. And we mock him by saying, you think I'm going to cut back on my coffee drinking for the month? You think I would cut back on my DirecTV plan for the month? You think I would drive a used vehicle? What has he given us? What has he given us? And is it worth sacrificing to give to somebody else? And I would say yes. I would say yes. Being a Christian is living intentional. It's living intentional. Saying, you know what? When I received Jesus Christ as my Lord, I died to the old man, and I became new in Christ Jesus. So everything I have, I owe to him. That's why my life is missional. That's why I can call myself a missionary, because I owe everything to him. It's not about the reward I get in heaven. It's not about I can toot my own horn and I can sit down with the tax lady at the end of the year and go, look how much I give to nonprofits. It's not about that. It's about wanting to be the best example of Jesus I can be to the world, and radiating his light and love to this lost and dying world. I want to brag on you guys for a moment. I want you guys to know I'm not beating you over the head. I want you to think a little bit, though, because our church has always done a great job with missions. We have. Supporting missions. Our BGM ministry has done an amazing job. This last year, we've received awards a couple different times. I think there's a plaque in the foyer that says over $3,000 in 2001, I believe, or 2021. That's amazing. That's amazing. Our women's ministry has done an amazing job. They had their garage sale in May, the first part of May, $700. When I was told that our offering last month was $200, I was okay with that. You know why? Because we did $700 in a garage sale for missions. We did way above what was asked of us. We had our silent auction and auction dinner for Good Samaritan Center, which is our local missions. That's our local outreach, and partnered with Haiti, and we raised over $2,900. You guys, that's owning the mission field. That's taking initiative, saying, I'm going to own the call that God's placed on our life to tell everybody about Jesus. But you know how that happens? Is by hearing the word of God and receiving it and being obedient to it. I want to tell you guys, Sister Renee, she may not be everybody's flavor. Her personality may clash with some of you guys', but she shared her heart with me about missions. And the one thing that me and her have in common is not just the loud personalities, but we have in common a heart for missions. And she said, you know, I went to a women's conference, And she goes, they were talking about all the money that the women's ministries in Southern Missouri Network had raised for missions. And she goes, you know what I realized? Our church name was not on that sign. We weren't giving anything to the women's ministry. And she goes, God put a burden on my heart to take ownership of that and to raise money for women's missions. So she was obedient and she took action. That's the example that we all need to follow. Taking ownership and taking action of when we see a need, meeting it. You know what? That was probably not the call of Brother Robert Truelove back there, because he didn't go to the women's conference, did he? But he can support Renee in that, right? I've had a dozen people, if not more, tell me, well, I'm glad you're called to Haiti because I'm not going. So, man, you don't know what you're missing out on, but okay. You don't have to go. You can just write a check. You know, that was kind of the joke. You just write a check. Make it out to Bumpy Road Missions. We'll make sure it goes where it needs to go. Sometimes we worry too much about where that money's going. When we give, who are we giving to? We're giving to Jesus Christ. And we should pray over that offering, say, Lord, bless it. May it be used for your kingdom and your glory. Think about BGMC. That's the kids' offering. And the kids' offering, they raised over $3,000. Why? Because adults took initiative and said, you know what, I'm going to support that cause. And it helps that we got Buddy barrels sitting everywhere, and Renee and Miranda do a good job of pushing them out into our laps to make sure we put change in them. So I want you to know I'm not beating this church up on missions. I love this church, and I love our heart for missions. And one of the things that drawed me here as a pastor was seeing people that had a heart to do outreach ministry locally and also had a heart for world missions, because they're few and far between. In fact, I was a part of a church that claimed to be missions minded because they had over 50 Assembly of God missionaries on the wall, but they never once went out in their own community to reach people. That's a problem. I think our church is doing a good job. But how many of you guys know that everything we do should be done in excellence for the Lord? And I can tell you as a pastor, I love the fact that we have 14 missionaries, but I'd like to see more. But the only way we can do that is people in our church owning the mission field and saying, you know what? I'm willing to support a missionary. I'm willing to be faithful and generous in that. And if the money doesn't come in this month, God's going to make a way. But I'm willing to support a missionary. I told my wife the other day, I said, I've got 5 missionaries right now that I would love to add to this church. But it's not my job to do that. It's the people who have to say, hey, let's do this. Let's add some missionaries. Let's be supportive. Let's make a difference. I'm getting ready to end. And I want to tell you this. A couple years ago, me and my wife had got an invitation to a missions conference. Heartland Baptist Church, Harrisonville, Missouri. I'd met the pastor one time. We talked Haiti, and he said, I want you to come, and I want you to be a guest, and I want you to get up and share about what God's doing in Haiti. Answer the call conference. And what I loved about this church was not that they're a Bible Baptist, they're King James only, they believe a little bit different or a whole lot different than me in some areas. But what I loved about this church is they took ownership of the mission field. They didn't just send money and say, well, we're satisfied because we wrote a check this month. There were people in that church that said, you know what? When that missionary came from Tanzania, they spoke to me. I like that couple. I'm drawn to that couple. So here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to be their prayer partner leaders. And I'm going to organize a team from this church that's going to get together once a month, and we are going to pray over these missionaries from Tanzania. And I'm going to be the one that reaches out to them on a weekly basis just to see how they're going in the mission field. See if there's any specific needs. I'm going to pray with them, and I'm going to build that relationship, and I'm going to be the door into our church. Are you following me? They supported 30-something missionaries, and they had over 16 teams already in place to pray for 16 of those 34 missionaries, and we're looking for more. And they would get up during this conference, a lot of them older people, and they say, hey, my name's Rocky Evans, and I go to church here, and God laid it on my heart to be the prayer leader of such and such missionary, such and such country. And I want you to know, I just love these people. I got to know them. I send them emails, and we email back and forth. And this is a video we put together to show you about their mission field. And they played a video. And he says, here's the deal. Second Tuesday of every month, we meet out here in such and such classroom. We have tacos every month. And we want to invite anybody that wants to be a part of our prayer team to join. And every one of those in that conference got up and shared about their missionary. Not all the missionaries were there because they're in the field. I loved that about that church. I thought, here's a church that understands God's heart. It's not about sending a check and never seeing the missionary anymore. It's about owning that mission field and knowing what they're doing and knowing what their burden is and knowing what they need prayer for and knowing what support they need. And then being the communicator for that church. Because they knew instantly, hey, we need to pray for their son Derek because their son Derek got sent to the hospital. He got this really bad situation where he can't keep fluids down and he's dehydrated. They don't have the money to send mom and Derek back overseas to the United States to get health care. We need to raise money. You follow me? That's part of sending the light. That's part of being that encouragement. It's not this one-time check. It's not this monthly check. It's actually knowing the people and saying, hey, I know you guys are doing a great job in Tanzania, and I want you to know Branch Assembly of God's praying for you. I want you to know that we've got your back. What do you need? Hey, can we send a package to you? Is there a way we can get some gifts to you? We got some things we want to send to you. Missionaries need that. They need encouragement. Because there's a whole lot of missionaries that get to the mission field and they get lonely and they get discouraged. And discouragement's a real thing, ain't it, believers? And they say, you know what? I can't handle it, and they come home. The harvest field's not been harvested yet, and they're coming home. Why? Because they need God's people to be an encouragement to them. And we can do that. Here's what we're going to do as we wrap up this service. I need somebody to run next door. Shade Michael, will you run next door and get the children's church and tell them that we're getting ready to pray over our flags? We're going to pray over our missionaries today. We're going to go to a flag and we're going to pray over each and every one of them here in just a minute. We've got two things we're going to do at the ending of the service. Brother Carl, why don't you head down this way, if you would. A few weeks ago, I preached on being a church mission or member and joining the church. I talked about the church body. I talked about how important it is to be committed to a local body of believers and to say, I'm committed and I'm going to stick this out thick or thin because this is where God's called me to be. And in response, several people took membership cards. Some of them are still praying over them. Some of them haven't filled them out. But we had 5 people that said, I want to join this church and I want to become a member. And I want to ask those 5 people to come forward right now. So Carl, Patricia, Brad, Kim, Robert, if you guys will come forward. We took these membership cards before the board and we talked about each and every one of these people and how God's placed them here. God wants to use them in this church. I am honored to be your pastor, and I'm thankful that you guys were obedient to answer the call to join the church and be a part of the church. And I want to present you with just a certificate. Some of you are like, man, I've been a member for years. I've never got one of these. If you want one, I can print one off for you. It's just a piece of paper that says Certificate of Church Membership. It's not going to get them a free ice cream cone at Sonic. But it's a reminder of the covenant that they made to God to say, you know what, I'm going to be a part of this church. I'm going to be committed to it. Boy, you guys did good. They were even in order, and I didn't even prepare it that way. Praise God. All right, if you guys will stand in a line here, I'm going to ask you guys to come up, just shake their hands, encourage them, welcome them into the fold, and then we're going to stay up here and we're going to pray. So if you guys will come and do that right now, we're excited that our church is growing.